welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I am going to do the second part of the video I did last week, which was 5 things to avoid saying to someone that is going through infertility, and today I'm going to do 5 things to avoid saying to someone that has experienced or is experiencing miscarriage. So obviously this is going to be quite a difficult video to film. It's a very sensitive subject, and yeah, I'm just going to try and give you these points. Unlike with the infertility video, these are maybe less about what you actually say, but more about kind of the timing and the way the words are delivered, as opposed to the words themselves. I'll explain that as I go along, and hopefully you will see what I mean. But I think the most important thing is that there isn't, as with infertility really, it's kind of a similar sort of situation in terms of the emotions you feel, and there isn't really anything you can say to make somebody feel better in that situation. You know, with miscarriage, somebody has lost their baby, at whatever stage that is, they have lost their baby, and there's nothing anyone can say that is going to make that better, or is going to make that okay, or is going to tell them why that happened. And without that, you know, it's not going to feel okay. You just need to give that person time to grieve is the main thing. But yeah, I'm going to go through my 5 points that I have come up with. As with the infertility video, I just want to say, if you have said any of these to someone, please don't panic. None of them are anything, well, maybe one of them, but I will go into that, but none of them are going to offend anyone. It's just about kind of when to say them and the best way to phrase them, rather than don't say them. I guarantee all of my friends and family will have said these to me, and that is absolutely fine. My friends and family have all handled it incredibly, and I couldn't be prouder of them, because I know it is a very difficult situation to have to deal with, definitely if you have not been in a similar position yourself. So here goes. So point 1 I would maybe avoid saying, that people said to me quite a lot after my miscarriage, was, you can always try again. And yes, absolutely, you can try again. I am trying again, like, there's no doubt about that. But I think it's more about timing with that. When someone has just gone through a miscarriage, they are mourning the loss of a child, they're mourning the loss of a baby, and first thing on their mind is not, well, you can always try again. That was their baby. To people outside that, you know, didn't have that bond with that baby yet, completely, it can be maybe difficult to form that connection with that child. But for the person whose stomach that baby has been growing inside, they have that bond instantly the second they see those 2 lines on the test. And you know, they're grieving the loss of a child, they need that time to grieve, they don't need to be reminded then and there that they can try again. Also, I think specific to my situation, as somebody who has really struggled to conceive, I think saying you can always try again, when actually trying again is no mean feat, and it can take an incredibly long time to just try again. I think it's quite frustrating to hear, because the issue itself isn't even just keeping the pregnancy, it's actually getting the pregnancy in the first place, getting that positive test. You know, I had that fear after it took me 14 months to conceive for the first time. What if I have to wait another 14 months or even longer, because people try for so much longer than I had to try as it is. What if I have to go through all of that again? So just trying again is a very scary, long and drawn out thought process, and it's not that easy for some people to just try again. And that is why I find that one really difficult, because just trying again isn't just trying again for some people. It is a whole traumatic process in itself, miscarriage aside. Point 2, which won't be relevant to all situations but was personally relevant to mine, and was something that is a difficult one, because it's something I have thought myself, but it's one of those things where I feel like it's okay to say it yourself, but it's kind of not okay for someone else to say it. and that is at least it was early on. For me, I was really relieved that my miscarriages were all early on, because it meant that it was a lot less, there was no kind of physically invasive procedure that I had to get done. It all happened naturally and by myself, and in that sense I was very grateful. I was also grateful, but sad at the same time, that I didn't have as long to bond with that baby. So in that sense I am grateful that it happened earlier on, but at least it happened earlier on. Like, there is never a good time to have a miscarriage. No one should ever have to go through a miscarriage, so time is completely irrelevant. To me, I was grateful, but if someone said that to me, and someone did say that to me, and it upset me quite a lot, to be honest, because it's never an okay time to have a miscarriage. A loss is a loss, whether you are 1 week or whether you are 40 weeks. And I'm not comparing the feelings, because I've never had a miscarriage after seeing a baby on a scan or seeing a heartbeat or anything like that, and I cannot imagine, like, that would be the most horrific thing. Makes me feel a bit emotional just thinking about it, to be honest. That would be horrendous, but a loss is a loss, and as soon as you see those 2 lines on a test and you know you're pregnant, that is your baby, and it doesn't matter at what stage you lose that baby, it's always, always incredibly difficult. To go off on a little bit of a tangent here, can we just quickly discuss the term chemical pregnancy? I absolutely hate that term. It's not a chemical pregnancy, it's a miscarriage. If you knew you were pregnant and you then started bleeding and you lost your baby, you had a miscarriage. You lost your baby that you knew you had because you had got a positive test. You had a miscarriage. That's all I want to say, because that really, really irritates me. To bring it back to the original point, just don't bring timing into it at all, I don't think. If that person specifically says to you, I'm really relieved that it happened early on, be like, yeah, of course, but you've still lost a baby and you need the time to grieve. That's all you need to say. You don't need to go into any detail. Just remind them that they deserve as much time to grieve as anyone else did. That's something I really, really struggled with, specifically with my first miscarriage, because it was so early on. If you haven't seen my infertility and recurrent miscarriage story, I will leave the link to that in the down bar, because that will explain a lot. But to give you a brief overview, I realised I didn't do that at the beginning of the video. I have had 3 miscarriages, all very early on. The first one was only at about 5 weeks. Even then, saying only 5 weeks, I shouldn't say that, because it's somehow belittling it, and I don't like that. It was at 5 weeks, it wasn't only at 5 weeks. So that's something I really struggled with after my first miscarriage, because I almost felt like I didn't have the right to feel how I felt, and I really struggled with kind of managing and processing those emotions when I didn't feel I was justified, which upsets me when I look back on it now, because I lost a baby that had been wanted for the longest, what felt like a lifetime, and it upsets me that I for some reason didn't think I had the right to grieve that baby. I still don't think I've properly grieved any of my miscarriages now. Like, life has been so busy that I've kind of just got on with things and pushed it all to the side, and you know, one day I think that's really going to hit me, but it needs to be known that whatever stage you have lost your baby, you have the right to grieve, because no one should feel, for whatever reason, that they aren't justified in how they are feeling. Point 3, which is the one I don't really understand, but I did get said to me quite a few times, to be honest, is at least you can drink now. No, that's not high on someone's list of priorities generally once they've had a miscarriage, is like going out and getting pissed. Like, not high on my list of things to do. I think if you wanted to say something along those lines, a really good thing to say would be like, you know, you need to be looking after yourself, run yourself a hot bath, read a good book, pour yourself a glass of wine, something like that, where you're saying, you know, I think the sentiment behind that is, you know, really look after yourself, but I think it's just the phrasing that's wrong on that. So I think, you know, telling someone to run themselves a hot bath and have a glass of wine, you are still getting across the point, but not so brutally. I think that's quite brutal. At least you can drink now. Woohoo! Like, no, not the best timing, not the best phrasing for that one. Point 4 is something that absolutely everyone I know that knew my situation said to me after my first miscarriage. Literally everyone. So if you're watching this and you know me and you think, ah shit, I said that, don't, because literally everybody, without fail, said this to me. And that is, at least you know you can get pregnant now. This is possibly more relevant if that person has struggled to conceive, but it was something I lost count of the amount of times I heard this, and I completely understand it. I thought it myself to a certain extent, you know, at least I know I can get pregnant now. It was a massive worry of mine that I would never conceive, and I think that's a massive worry of thousands of women probably that are struggling to conceive, or that are struggling with infertility or any kind of reason that is preventing them conceiving. So I think that is a massive fear of a lot of women, and I completely understand why people said that to me. The problem is, I think that all comes down to timing. I think when you've just had a miscarriage, I think your fear is, if you don't have children already particularly, what if I just can never carry a healthy pregnancy? I know for me, speaking from my own experience, I was terrified, and still now, I'm still terrified that I wouldn't be able to carry a healthy pregnancy. So when people said to me, at least you know you can get pregnant, yes, that was a relief. That was definitely a relief. But the overriding feeling and what I was sort of screaming in my head at the same time was, but if I can't carry a pregnancy, there is no point getting pregnant. That was my worry. So I think that fear overrides the relief so much of being able to conceive that you can't really find comfort in that anyway, because you're constantly thinking, well, what's the point? That was my feeling. What's the point? What's the point in getting pregnant if I can't carry a baby? In the UK, going off on another little ranty tangent here, but in the UK you have to have 3 confirmed miscarriages before they will investigate and try and look into the reasons why. I think that is abysmal, like horrendous. No one should have to go through any miscarriage and all you want are answers. So I think it's really difficult then to be able to understand why it's happened, and that fear is constantly there. I have had 3 miscarriages, so I have had those investigations and nothing came back for me. So whilst that fear has diminished slightly, it is definitely still there, and I don't think I will go through a pregnancy at any stage without thinking this is going to go wrong. I will fully expect it. That's one of the reasons I decided I would possibly try doing live pregnancy tests, because even if it's positive, it's not going to be a big happy pregnancy announcement for me, and that really upsets me because I always dreamed of doing a beautiful pregnancy announcement. It's not going to be that for me. It's going to be, I'm pregnant, but this is the start of a probably long and painful journey, and some of you might find that difficult to understand because I will be obviously over the moon, but I will also be absolutely petrified, and I think the terror will outweigh the excitement. So yeah, I totally understand the sentiment behind at least you know you can get pregnant, but I think it really is about timing on that. It's not the best thing to say straight away because the fear of not being possibly able to carry a baby is completely outweighing the relief that you can get pregnant. Number 5 is more of a cliche. That's kind of along the lines of the infertility ones. Like, you could say this for infertility, you could say this for absolutely any situation in life, and that is, everything happens for a reason. Me and my good friend were discussing this the other day, and she has also been through miscarriage, and this really is irritating to hear. Again, completely understand the sentiment, completely understand there's no malice behind it, it's meant with the most care and love, and totally get it. And if someone said that to me, I would in no way be offended. I would completely, you know, say thank you graciously, and that's that, it's totally fine. But when you've been through a miscarriage, all you want are answers. All you want to know is, why has this happened? And by the phrase, everything happens for a reason, it just makes it seem like you're just meant to be like, okay, and just sit back and do nothing about it, because everything happens for a reason and you're never going to know what that reason is, so there's no point looking into it. So it's a bit of a difficult one. Like, no one would be offended if you said it, I don't think. Well, I wouldn't be offended if you said it, but when all you want are answers as to why it did happen, like your baby died, and that is incredibly difficult, and for your baby to die and not know why is the most soul-destroying, like, thing to have to come to terms with, the fact that your baby died and you're never going to know why. That's really, really, really tough. And everything happens for a reason provides very little comfort in that, to be honest. Again, need to reiterate, it's not a horrible thing to say, it's a perfectly nice thing to say, and it's a normal thing to say, but it doesn't really provide comfort to me anyway, and to people I have spoken to. So maybe just avoid saying that. You could maybe say something like, it must be driving you absolutely insane that you don't have answers. I wish I had the answers for you. I hope one day you get the answers and you understand why this happened, rather than just, everything happens for a reason, let's leave it at that and just never know. My last point, which is a little bit of a bonus one, so it's a number 6 really, which I also did in my infertility video. Sorry, but 6 things doesn't sound as organised as 5. Is not a phrase, it is just my number 1 piece of advice. If someone asked me like what they should say or what they should do if their friend has gone through a miscarriage, and that would be, just give them time. I think time is so important. If someone lost a friend or a family member, they would be given all the time in the world to grieve. It would be completely accepted and completely understood, and no one would rush them, and people would be given that time to grieve. With miscarriage, I feel like you are not given that time, and I don't just mean that in terms of by people, I mean that in terms of work, I mean that in terms of, like, luckily with my miscarriages, my work were absolutely incredible. They gave me as much time as I needed, and that was amazing, but not everywhere will be like that. And miscarriage isn't understood as well, I don't think, as the grief of losing a loved one that is already kind of born into the world, if that makes sense. I think it's just really, really important that you make that friend or family member know that you know that they need time to grieve, that they need to be able to take as long as they need to try and piece themselves back together, because miscarriage breaks you. It really, really breaks you. Like I said, I still don't think I've grieved for my miscarriages yet. I think one day I'm going to have to, and I'm going to have to kind of sit down and just process it properly in my own head. But again, I think that takes time to get to a point where you are comfortable enough to do that. I'm finding making these videos extremely therapeutic. That is why sometimes I do get a bit emotional with it, because I don't really go into that much detail, and I think it's really important that you kind of go through the experience step by step and realise that there was nothing you could have done. It's not your fault it happened, because blame is massively, you know, debilitating when you've had a miscarriage. You think you must have done something wrong, and, you know, you didn't do anything wrong. It is just the nature of life, and the nature of life can be bloody cruel. So that would be my number one piece of advice if anyone asks me, and it is just to allow time. Don't rush people, don't expect them to, you know, be upset for a weekend and then just get over it, because it's not something you ever get over, I don't think. You learn to live with it and you learn to cope with it like any kind of grief, but you will never lose that feeling, you will never forget what happened, you will never just put it to one side and bury it. Like, it doesn't work that way. So yeah, that would be the main thing for me. I would just say, don't rush people, don't expect too much of them, give them time. They need to heal, they need to process, they need to learn to live with what is an extremely difficult thing to accept and live with. So guys, that was a very long and rambly video, but I hope that was okay. I hope you understand where this video was coming from. It was coming from a good place of wanting to help. I always get worried that things like this, it's such a sensitive subject, I get worried that things might be taken in the wrong way, but hopefully I got my point across okay. And yeah, I will leave it at that for this video, guys, and see you all in my next one.